cost of living crisis. We'll thrash that one out too. And get your verdict in on the clash at 9:20. After Brits are warned not to get drunk over Christmas, sorry, fouled already on that one, due to NHS disarray, the Telegraph's Celia Warden has complained of being made to feel dirty for enjoying a tipple. Is boozing becoming demonised? Man of the people and former Corrie Star legend Charlie Lawson joins me for a nightcap, or possibly a cup of tea, uncancelled at 10:45. And, of course, as always, tomorrow's front pages and Greatest Britain Union Jackers on the way too. This is Dawn Neeson, identifying as Dan Wootton. Tonight, let's go. My digest is coming up. I bet you can't wait, can you? But first, the news with the very lovely Bethany Elsey.
Dawn, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Scottish Parliament has approved a new law that will make it easier and quicker for people to legally change their gender.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
The bill will remove the need for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria and lower the minimum age of applicants from 18 to 16. It will also reduce the time a person must live as their acquired gender from 2 years to 3 months before it is legally recognised. The UK government is considering action in the Supreme Court to block the bill over concerns of safety for women and children. Thousands of ambulance workers will stage 2 further strike days next month over a pay dispute. Unison says it will affect services across 5 regions of England on the 11th and 23rd of January. Several union leaders say the action is a result of the government's refusal to discuss pay. But the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says they must respect the independent pay review body.
You cannot have an independent pay review process which takes the politics out of pay and then have politicians intervening in that process. Not only does it blow the process up and destroy the process, but it also means what happens in future years. You know, is this going to be politicians now doing that? It's really important. It's been done by governments of different colours. The independent pay review process has been used pretty successfully, and that's what we want to continue.
250,000 people set to travel by air tomorrow are being warned to expect delays as Border Force staff begin a week of strike action. It's as rail workers get ready for further industrial action too, with RMT members in Scotland walking out on Christmas Eve until Tuesday morning. And the government has announced rail fares in England will rise by 5.9% in March. The Transport Secretary says the cap is well below inflation and it will help reduce the impact on passengers. A winter weather emergency is threatening more than 135 million Americans with sub-zero temperatures. Take a look at this dashcam video from Denver in Colorado. Those blizzard conditions with dangerously high winds are wreaking havoc during the holiday travel period. 45 states are under storm alerts, and President Joe Biden is warning Americans who want to leave to do so before it gets worse.
And I don't know whether your bosses will let you, but if you all have travel plans, leave now. Not a joke. I'm sending my staff, if they had plans to leave on tomorrow, late tonight or tomorrow, I'm telling them to leave now. They can talk to me on the phone. It's not life and death, but it will be if they don't get out.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Dan Wootton tonight with Dawn.
Well, 'twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Possibly because this is December 2022 and they were all on strike. What do we want? More cheese, better cheese, inflation-busting cheese, and less cats, especially the Tory fat cat kind. Things are now so Christmas crackers that none of us would be surprised to learn that Santa himself, downing his sack and joining his one-time arch enemy, the Grinch, or Mick, as his mates call him, on the picket line. Here's not, of course, kids, because Santa doesn't do humbug. And you know what? Nor should we. Today's news warns us again of prices soaring, the economy tanking, and even worse, Mrs Brown's boys are back on telly. Planes, trains, automobiles, reindeer are all screwed. Those of us who miraculously survived summer's killer heatwave from hell, remember that week, are now being told that we're about to freeze or drown in biblical level floods. I mean, come on, they literally have told us stepping outside our own homes risks possible death, haven't they? I mean, come on, we've heard that before somewhere. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Kind of like the constant scaremongering fed to us during the pandemic. You know, where the only scenario was the worst case one, where politicians of all hues deliberately set out to terrify and traumatise an entire population. And we all know the consequences of that one. Now we have a new winter of discontent because, let's be honest, that's what it is, isn't it? Unions whose members have very little common job-wise are deliberately coordinating industrial action to cause as much harm as possible. Suspicious behaviour at best, dangerous at worst. Are they fighting for their workers or playing a political game to bring down a government they despise? If ever we needed three wise men, it's now. Sadly, we seem to have ended up with the donkeys. All of this is designed to grind us down, to make us believe that we are helpless, that our country is finished, to leave us so vulnerable we'll believe any old tosh we're told. Well, you know what? What has never been on strike in this country? And that's our fighting spirit. Those of you of a certain age, possibly myself included in this one, will have been through far worse than this before. And guess what? It passed. Everything does. Daring to call Britain great these days is very probably racist, because most things are, aren't they? Including milk at one point, I think. But no matter what life has thrown at us, we do survive, and we should never, ever forget that. OK, things could be better. Most places in the world could after a global pandemic. But what's worse? Facing tough times with a glass half empty or a glass half full. They, not sure who they actually are, but they want you to play the blame game and wallow in your own self-pity. It's called divide and conquer. They don't want you rolling up your sleeves, gritting your teeth and fighting back. But come on, we are all so much stronger than you think. So much more resilient. We are still all great Brits. Because if we weren't, why would so many migrants be willing to risk their lives to come here? So make sure you do have a Merry Christmas, no matter what they tell you, folks. And those of us who want downtrodden despairing can make like the turkey and go get stuffed. But to respond now, my superstar panel, and little secret, right? OK, I'm being Dan tonight, so the superstar panel thing. Do we feel like superstars?
Yeah.
Every day.
Everything. They do? I don't in any case.
I don't. No, I'm with you. I don't. I hate it. I think it leads people to expect too much.
Depends which one of my children.
I might have peaked too soon by calling us superstars there. Still to come. It's... Right, OK. So, OK, my superstar panel. Right, OK. Now, let's get going. We have Christine Hamilton, the marvellous... And I've just been reading your chest. Sorry, that's why I was distracted, reading Christine's chest. We have Sean and we have the lovely Amy Nicole. So, come on. Are we doomed? Do we have to wallow in this doom and gloom that everyone is telling us we have to? Come on, Christian. You're a fighting spirit. You have the fighting
keep calm
spirit.
and carry on is exactly what we've got to do. Although the interesting thing is, and not a lot of people know this, that poster was actually never distributed in the war because the government had them all rolled out and then they thought, hang on a moment, people aren't panicking, so they're going to think they should be panicking. If we suddenly tell them to keep calm, they'll be thinking, hang on a minute.
I should be panicking.
Why I should be panicking? So, in fact, they were never put out. But, I mean, what else are we supposed to do? Go and hide under the duvet and hope it all goes away? No. Everybody's got to keep calm and carry on. As you say, things have been far worse. As my mother used to say to us when things were bad, she said, we've been through the war, darling. This is nothing.
And she's correct. And look...
She's right.
There's two things. I could have written much of your digest today.
And probably better as well, by the way. To be honest,
because
it's
a
been a
lot
long
of
day.
it is this politics. I look at what Labour and the left are doing, and I really, really need them to understand how are they going to piece the country back together. You know, they've made all this what I call a coalition of the disgruntled, and that isn't going to go away if they win the election. They're going to have to deal with it. And what we see here now, the more afraid we are, the more compliant we are.
Yes.
The more afraid we are, the easier it is to put one over on us. And I say this to everybody all the time. No government made this country. The people of the country made this country. Let's give them the chance. And the first thing you have to do is stop pummeling them with fear. If you remember what the climate activists did to our children around climate change exists. But don't pummel our children so hard that they feel afraid for their future.
Well, there's a recognised medical complaint, isn't there? A psychological thing where it's like anxiety now, and kids are talking about it. And I think that's what they almost tried to do to us during the pandemic. They tried to traumatise us and make us so scared. And I feel like they're doing that again now.
They succeeded in the pandemic, didn't they? I mean, we were all terrified to start with, terrified to go out, terrified to breathe, terrified to do anything.
Amy, do you think, come on, OK, it's not great, it's, you know, it could be better,
Certainly
we're not alone.
I think that we don't want to absolve the situation of any guilt, though, because, Sean, you can't keep saying Labour and the left.
Yes,
it is the Tory government that has been in control for the last 12 years. And I think all the stuff that you mentioned in your monologue was just testament to the tried, tested and failed Tory experiment. And actually, we can keep calm and carry on because we can look forward to a change of government. Because, let's face it, this Tory government too shall pass.
I will say this, there's no doubt that Amy's correct. There has been a Tory government for all that time. But let's be very, very clear about this. Keir Starmer has backed almost every single move they have made, and he has absolutely no plan. He has no plan at all. So we lurch from the problem we're in now into no man's land if we adopt Keir.
But actually, with the lockdowns, it was, I want it longer, harder, faster, like some terrible porn star, wasn't it? I mean,
all Keir Starmer has to do now is keep very quiet and hope that it all lands in his lap. He doesn't really... Anything he says now is going to be analysed out of existence because there is an outside possibility that he might be Prime Minister.
It is going to happen, isn't it? Because I think that...
Well, if the Tories get a grip of immigration, it might not.
But they've had a whole 12 years, and I think now this current cabinet is regarded by many as the worst ever.
Yeah, well,
not just in the last memory. Ever.
I have sympathy with that view.
The worst ever until you compare them to the Labour front bench. What the Labour front bench forgets...
This is so hypothetical.
You have to win. You can't rely on the Tories being terrible to lose. You have to win. And there's one thing... Listen, I would not sit here and tell you huge mistakes haven't been made. People would laugh if I said that. But the point is, Keir Starmer and his gang have not demonstrated any forward step.
Whereas
None
the
whatsoever.
Tory gang have demonstrated pure incompetence
Amy, though,
on every single level, on every front. Immigration, public services. Half the world is at literal... Half the country is at literal standstill right now.
Hold on,
sorry,
let me talk here.
Sorry.
It's my show, evidently.
It is.
I'm Dan today. But,
And you're a
Amy, when
superstar.
it comes to the NHS and the strikes there in particular, GDP was the same Labour spending as Conservative spending, so it wasn't that great under Labour. So why are you just blaming the Tories?
Because the wage increases have not happened, and that has been 12 years in the making. They've had a real terms pay cut. So I can't understand how you could possibly
because the political class, including Keir Starmer, especially Keir Starmer, spent that money on a lockdown. What's interesting is, right, you can say the Tories have demonstrated poor leadership. Let's accept that premise. But what Labour have done is demonstrate even poorer leadership because they've supported all of that and have no response now. So you be changing to nothing.
Christine, final word in your festive jumper.
The electorate have a very, very short memory, and people come the next election are not going to remember that Keir Starmer said longer, further and harder on the lockdown. They're simply not. And the strikes are political strikes, by and large. They really are. They want to bring down the government, and I fear it's going to get worse and worse, and come early next year we will have a general strike on our hands, just to cheer everybody up.
Christine Bailey, Christine Bailey, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Sean Bailey, Christine Hamilton, Amy Nicole, thank you so much. Right, OK, it's still to come. Is there hope for the common sense policing after they met balk at the idea of investigating Jeremy Clarkson of his Meghan Markle article? Social media sensation and self-possessed Chief Gammon, June Slater, joins me to discuss at 9:35. But first, is King Charles right to reject a cut-price coronation during a cost-of-living crisis? Historian David Starkey goes head-to-head with Republic's Graham Smith in The Clash. Let me know what you think on this one. Email us at dan@gbnews.uk or tweet using the handle @GBNews. There's also a poll up at the moment you can vote on now. The results after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Right, it's time now for The Clash. Now, King Charles, I still can't get used to that King Charles thing, has reportedly decided against a low-budget coronation next year, despite concerns over the optics in the midst of a cost-of-living crisis. Despite claims of the sovereign's initial reservations, the palace and government have reportedly agreed to embrace full-blown pomp and pageantry on May the 6th in a bid to showcase Britain, having taken note of the huge international interest in the commemorations for Queen Elizabeth II after her death in September. While the King's coronation is expected to be shorter and have fewer attendees than his mother's almost 70 years ago, the only elements expected to be axed are those deemed to be outdated and cumbersome, meaning we will have a celebration fit for Britain. But Is this the most sensible move politically for the royal family? Already in a bit of a mess, aren't they? When regular Brits are having to tighten their belts. I want to hear if you think King Charles is right to have a cut price, you know, pound shop coronation during a cost of living crisis. Send me your thoughts on dan@gbnews.uk or tweet them to me at gbnews. And while you're there, go vote in our Twitter poll. I'll bring you those results very shortly, by the way. But first, to help you make up your mind, let me bring in historian David Starkey and Graham Smith, Chief Executive of anti-monarchy group Republic. Right, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. OK, so the coronation, initially it was going to be a cut price job and we were all going to be fine. That's a good thing. And now it's going to be all the pomp and ceremony. So, I mean, you know, David Starkey, this is surely going to be good for the country, isn't it? It's promoting, the reason evidently is we're promoting GB. It's a marvellous country, come and visit us. A good idea.
Yes, full stop. And also, come on, Dawn, a cut price coronation. Do you know what a New York barista calls a decaf espresso? He calls it a why bother? Why bother with a cut price coronation? The problem is, and I'm very fond of Graham, he's a sweet, nice man, but of course he doesn't understand Britain, and Republicans don't. The fundamental thing is we need ceremony. As somebody whose great festival we're about to celebrate, Jesus said, man does not live by bread alone. You want things that bring you together collectively. It's all well and good to talk about what it will do for Britain abroad. Dawn, I'm much more concerned about what it will do for Britain at home. What the Queen's death, what that extraordinary procession, that progress through the country of King Charles did. We desperately need bringing together. We need bringing together, we need bringing out of the dumps in exactly the same way that we did back in 1953. I was a boy then. I saw the coronation, the first time I'd seen television. We were emerging from the dark gloom of a Labour government that had inflicted rationing 6 years beyond the war. We wanted something different. We wanted to be together. We wanted to celebrate. We wanted to belong. That is what it will do.
Graham, surely David's got a point. I mean, it's tough at the moment. Yes, it's tough financially, but, you know, it would cheer us up. It's a bit of colour. It's a bit of light relief and amongst all the doom and gloom. Surely we can allow ourselves one day of celebrating.
Well, no, I think that the problem with staunch royalists like David is that they don't understand Britain, and they think and they patronise Britain by suggesting that we need to bend the knee to this one very ordinary family. I mean, let's put a few things into context. Firstly, Charles is already king. He doesn't need a coronation at all. So I would agree with the comment, you know, why bother? Why bother? We don't need it at all. He's already king. It makes no constitutional or political difference. And what it will do is, I think, backfire. I think that it will certainly be a focal point for Republican protests, and we'll be protesting down there on the day and in the lead up to it. It will be a slap in the face to millions of people in this country who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to pay their rent, who are struggling to cope with mortgages where the interest rates are going up. And King Charles, I'm also getting used to that. King Charles is constantly putting his hands deeper into the taxpayer's pocket, and it has to stop. And there's absolutely no reason for us to be throwing tens of millions of pounds on a big look at me tour for Charles when he is already king. We need to actually start challenging the world on secrecy, on abuse of public money.
When an American president is elected, he is elected, there is still an inauguration ceremony. There is such exactly for President Macron. President Macron in France is now actually being accused of imitating the kings of England and France, because he's going out putting his arm around failed footballers who've lost the World Cup. And we've just got to stop imagining that life is simply reasonable. Paul Graham imagines that life is just about reason, that it's boring, that it's dull. He is a typical Puritan.
David,
the last time we had a republic, they abolished Christmas. They simply they hate pleasure,
ceremony.
they hate
something
fun,
to look
they
to.
hate colour, they hate
the royals
Britain.
do not provide it.
Sorry, Graham, you just sort of implied that if we did go ahead with the coronation that was a bit sort of like pomp and ceremony, that people would be so unhappy they'd be rioting on the streets and people would be campaigning along the route to, I don't know, off with their heads, that type of thing?
No, I said that there'll be protests, and there will be protests because I'm organising them, and there will be plenty of other people organising protests.
They'll be as negligible as they usually are.
If you look at the other big events, I mean, the way they're portrayed in the media, you would think the whole country is interested. They're not. At the Jubilee, 14% said that they were definitely going to be taking an interest. Most people were not interested. Same was true 10 years ago with the Jubilee. Same was true with the 2011 wedding. Same was true with the 2018 wedding. No, most people are not that bothered by the royal family and their big set-piece events.
Come on. When we lost the Queen, I think the whole family felt that. Surely we were all interested. We did care. How can you say we weren't interested?
Within days, people were starting to complain about the saturation coverage. You know, it was excessive. It was also disgraceful in terms of broadcasters who didn't take one moment to reflect the very odd situation that this man, very ordinary, prickly, difficult individual, just walks into the job of head of state in a modern democracy. No sort of discussion about whether or not he's qualified, no discussion about whether or not he has any legitimate right to that job. His mum had it, therefore he walks into it. And there was there's something like 27% in a poll back in the beginning of the year. It's consistently now about a quarter of the population want the monarchy abolished. 15% on top of that are in the don't know camp, which is an increase in that. Support for the monarchy has dropped from 75 to 60%. And none of that is reflected in the way these things are covered. I mean, at the moment, Republicans are outpolling every political party in the country, save for Labour. You know, and yet none of that discussion gets included in this kind of coverage. And so people are left with the impression that the country is celebrating these big events. They are not.
It's a good thing you're on GB News because we give everyone the opportunity to have an opinion. David, coming back to you, I mean, surely this will, I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent, but surely it will raise more questions about the trouble with Andrew and Harry. Do we want really to open all those again, those wounds?
I don't think it will. I mean, I think that, again, we've had Graham lecturing us on opinion polls. Andrew and Meghan and Harry are the absolute margins now of public consciousness. People simply don't care. I think people do care about the king. They care about the monarchy. And what, of course, Graham, who is actually profoundly ignorant about our history as well as the state of public opinion, we are a republic. But we're a crowned republic. And if you actually
David,
look
I mean,
at
that is profound ignorance about our constitution.
We'd had to respect, as our head of state, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson and those before them.
This is the
serious countries in Europe.
This is a profoundly ignorant statement.
That are the most please just let me finish. Are the most democratic, are constitutional monarchies. It works. We haven't produced a Biden. We haven't produced what was even worse, the Orange Man before it. And if we had, as we showed with Truss, as we showed with Boris, we get rid of them quickly. But the central figure of our nation, the thing, by the way, which is why the army is
illiteracy, David.
The army that swears allegiance to the crown, that swears allegiance to something above and beyond politics, above and beyond the mere ebb and flow of opinion polls, the thing that touches us, touches our history, that matters, and leaves little epiphenomena
other countries
like
do this.
and like
Ireland has a history. Iceland has a history. I'm sorry, you go on. You really do go on. Iceland has a history. Ireland has a history. Finland has a history. Republics have histories. America has a history. France has a history. They don't forget about these things because they have given up the idea of looking up to some really tedious, dull, uninspiring people.
America has a ruling class. The Kennedys exercise much more influence, badly, actually, in the House of Windsor.
Charles is completely uninspiring, dull. You know, he's got no qualification for the job. No one has voted for him. And if there was a free and fair election in which he was a candidate, he wouldn't dare stand it. If he did, he would lose and lose badly. And the fact that he is therefore our king, despite the fact that he would lose and lose badly, should be the reason why we get rid of the monarchy. But there's a whole load of other reasons, like the abuse of public money, like the secrecy, like the interfering in politics behind closed doors. This is a rotten institution that does not deserve to exist. And we should not.
Unlike the beauties of the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the glory of a House of Lords that appoints Tom Watson with the Labour Party, which I'm sure you propose.
The House of Lords should go too. The House of Lords is rotten.
Come on, be sensible, be reasonable. I know it's difficult.
Boys, shush. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. OK, well, that is called The Clash because it's a clash. That was historian David Starkey and Graham Smith, the Chief Executive of Anti-Monarchy Group. You might have spotted that bit. Thank you both so much for joining me tonight. Great fun to listen to both of you and very fiery, a great clash. Right, blimey. So who do you agree with? Is King Charles right to reject a cut price coronation during a cost of living crisis? Are you going to join the riots on the street as organised? Oh, Cam on Twitter says, the bigger the event, the more money it will pump into the British economy. Of course it should be big. Meanwhile, Richard on Twitter says, he announced soon after he became king that he would have a slimmed-down coronation. Now, he is saying he wants all the bells and whistles. I won't be spending too much on it. He probably won't be king for very long anyway. Oh, my gosh, what's going to happen? You know something we don't? Meanwhile, Sean on Twitter says it's the king's choice. He'll have what he wants for his coronation. He is the king after all. Blimey. OK, and your verdict is now in. OK, brace yourself. 67% of you agree that King Charles is right to reject a cut-price coronation, while 33% of you think he is wrong. Curious. Any case, coming up is Suella Braverman's plan to house illegal arrivals on this year's cruise ships a happy compromise to prevent communities being overrun? Or is it still too appealing for those channel crossers? GB News star Anana Akua analyses at 9:50. But first, after the Met chief refuses to investigate Jeremy Clarkson for hate speech over his controversial Meghan column, are we finally seeing a return to common sense policing? Social media sensation and self-processed Chief Gavin, June Slater gives her unfiltered take coming up right now.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back. Now, the furious backlash surrounding Jeremy Clarkson's Meghan Markle article at the weekend has reached a new level of hysteria, with demands for the police to get involved. The police? In his controversial column in The Sun, the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire host said he hated the Duchess on a cellular level and was dreaming of the day when the royal was made to parade naked as the public pelted her with excrement. Not content with rallying for him to lose his job and livelihood, some outraged readers are calling for a hate probe into the incident, an idea which has thankfully been nipped in the bud by Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley.
I think there's a line to be drawn, Nick. It's not for the police to get involved in anything that's about, is something ethical, is it moral, is it proper, is it offensive? The legal lines are only crossed when, generally when things are said that are intended or likely to stir up or incite violence. I don't think this is one of those cases, but of course we'll keep a close eye on it.
Self-processed Chief Gammon, June Slater, joins me now to tackle this one. June, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's evening even. Is there hope for the police? I mean, are they actually going to get back to, I don't know, nicking crooks after this? What do you reckon?
Well, it's certainly a breath of fresh air after what we've had with Cressida Dick. The only thing they got right with her was her surname. Unfortunately, we've been victims of being afraid to say what we think. And anybody who speaks their mind completely is always going to be in trouble. But Clarkson and his comments, asking him to tone it down is a bit like asking a pantomime dame not to wear so much makeup. He's not going to do that, is he? He's going to be Jeremy Clarkson. It's what he does. He's outlandish. As far as sacking him goes, ridiculous. He's not done his job. He's done his job because, as you know, Dawn, you work in publishing, he'll have had to get this past an editor or a sub-editor, and someone will have said, great column, and published it. That's what happened to Katie Hopkins. She got it past 2 editors, and then when it went out, there was this campaign to get her cancelled. She was cancelled. It's happening now with Clarkson, but fortunately, in this era, we've got the trailblazers at the front of the helm, GB News, who have honest opinion from both sides of the fence. Then we've got Twitter that's opened itself up, and we've got this new police chief, Mark Rowley, who, he's right. The police are there to make sure we don't break a law, that we don't rob people, mug people, stab people. And if Sadiq Khan was as bothered about London and knife crime and acid attacks as he was about hurty tweets, we'd probably live in a safer place. This guy's a breath of fresh air. And Clarkson, just leave him back under his rock, let him do his column, get on with his life. I'm no fan of the...
This is the thing, June, isn't it? I think we can all agree that what he said went beyond the pale, but it's the job of a columnist to get the column and your publication talked about. And what has everyone been talking about ever since? Well, you know, the thing I have problems here with as well, June, is you've actually had MPs, there's one Scottish SNP, who actually wrote to TV companies saying, don't ever have clerks on our TV again. Now, June, what gives an MP the right to dictate to us plebs who and what we can watch on TV? Where are they going with this one?
Well, instead of calling them MPs, they should be called PMs, public morons, because they now seem to involve themselves in every aspect of our life and see themselves as much greater and more important figures than they are. They're there to represent us. They're not there to give their opinion. They're there to represent us. And they forget that it's us, the people who are sovereign. We hand that over to Parliament in trust for them to behave properly. An SNP is lucky to even have a seat, because that in itself, the way it was elected, you got basically Nigel Farage's party, UKIP, got 4 million votes and 1 seat, and Scotland got 54 seats. There's 53 of them shouldn't be there, as far as I'm concerned. We need a minister to run Scotland. And these other people, they're imposters to me, because of the way the system's set up. 5 million people get 54 seats, and the rest of us have to put up with this.
I think they haven't got they haven't got the message that, you know, they're elected to sort of like try and run the country, not censor what we read and what we watch on our TVs. Now, obviously, Clarkson broke no criminal laws, so why would the police get involved? The other thing I wanted to ask you on this matter, June, is that, you know, it's sort of like, you know, women have had police turning, obviously mob-handed up at their doors to question them about their views on being a woman after they said bit of a hurty word about maybe the transgender community. So do you think that, you know, hopefully our new Met Chief Police will actually put a stop to that one as well?
Well, it's moving in the right direction, and we've got a lot of people to thank. Lawrence Fox and Harry Miller from the Bad Law Project, which is a spin-off, as it were, from the Reclaim Party. They've got this ball rolling because they've challenged the College of Policing. Not only that, they won, and Harry won before he met Lawrence. He took that to court, risking his own house. He believed in the principle of challenging bad law. And this is somehow... and GB News, you're at the forefront. This is trailblazing on free speech, this. Or I wouldn't be sat here, Dawn. I'm not a journalist. So we've got to look at all these little movements that are going on. You've got the Bad Law Project with Lawrence, you've got GB News, you've got Twitter opening up, reinstating doctors that were cancelled, and now you've got a chief of police that sounds like one.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I don't think Meghan will be that upset either, June, because she's doing what she's put on her to do, get everybody talking about her no matter what, isn't it? Absolutely making money out of it. June Slater, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A voice of common sense, as usual. Really lovely to have you with us tonight. Right, coming up, are unions clutching at straws by claiming government sexism prolonging strike action? I'll debate that with my superstar panel and bring you the first of tomorrow's papers in the media buzz at 10. But first, is Suella Braverman's plan to house illegal migrants on disused cruise ships a sensible compromise to prevent communities being overrun? Or is it still too appealing an option? GB News star Nana Akua joins me next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, welcome back. Now, GB News host Nana Akua is tonight's outsider. Today, 42 Albanians, including 32 convicted criminals, were successfully deported to their home country in a big win for the government. Still not many, though, is it? However, over 100,000 illegal migrants still need emergency accommodation, and the Home Office is now suggesting housing them on cruise ships. Quizzed in a Justice and Home Affairs Committee, Home Secretary Suella Braverman refused to deny that plans were afoot to house asylum seekers on luxury vessels.
As well as the holiday parks and so on, surplus military sites that you're looking at, but there was mention of cruise ships. I think it would be helpful just to know whether that is on your cruise ships. Disused cruise ships are on your list.
When you talk about vessels, I would just say, and all I can say because we are in discussions with a wide variety of providers, that everything is still on the table and nothing is excluded.
Thank you.
Now, this would help to ease the crippling pressure on many British towns and cities to house the wave of migrants arriving on our shores. But, Nana, hello, lovely, and looking gorgeous as ever. Welcome this evening, good to talk to you. But, Nana, the people coming from the terrible conditions of Calais really need or deserve the luxury of a cruise ship. Or does crossing the Channel remain an appealing option under this plan? I mean, it's a cruise ship. My mum goes on cruises. She loves cruises. Is this a good idea?
Well, do you know what? I think that Suella was watching my show about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we actually posed that question to our viewers and listeners. And it turns out that it's not a bad idea at all. Look, I don't see what's wrong with it at all. It's a brilliant idea. First of all, it would be a form of offshore processing. This is something that people have been arguing for and fighting for. So instead of being on somebody else's land, so for example, France, you'd have to negotiate with them. You could actually do it from the Channel. So migrants don't actually land in the UK. So there's no way they can abscond and run away, because that is happening, whether we like it or not. We're saying that it's 45,000 or so have arrived this year. That is probably the tip of a massive iceberg. And what are our options?
we're offering housing them in barracks and places like that, and literally disturbing the local ecosystems and the populations that are there. And the people aren't happy with this. So I think it's a brilliant idea. What's wrong with the cruise ship?
Well, I mean, Suella also said that, the asylum system costs are set to spiral to £3.5 billion next year.
Yeah.
Now, Nana, can you ever imagine in our wildest dreams that we would ever be discussing? I mean, the current cost £7 million a day in hotels. Can you imagine in your wildest dreams that we'd ever be talking about this money like it was like, oh, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, and we're the muggins that are paying for this, right? So we're going to have to stuff this up. In the meantime, our troops, military who live in some of the army barracks are living in substandard accommodation. Yeah. Turns out that some of those people managing that accommodation seem somewhat, well, I mean, I'm not going to say because obviously we don't know, but some of those people who are looking after that accommodation don't appear to be putting the money in the right places, because it certainly isn't getting better, living in mouldy accommodation. And it's just, you would pay for a hotel, you would pay for a cruise ship. These people should go on these things. We can process them, and if need be, send them exactly back where they come from, back to France, which isn't all that bad, or perhaps to another destination.
So, but do you think no matter what answers Suella comes up with, she will always have the woke, the sort of like, the human rights lawyers going, you can't do that, but without coming up with an alternative?
Well, I know, it's ridiculous. And you know what? The worst thing is, those people never have that accommodation, or migrants living next door to them. They're more than happy to talk about it, but as soon as it happens in their own place, they won't be happy with it. A lot of those woke lefties, OK, why don't you house them near you? Or why don't you make a bedroom free if you think that it's such a terrible idea putting someone on a cruise ship? I mean, you would pay to do this. You would pay to go on a cruise ship. You pay to have a hotel room. It is absurd that we cannot put people up in these places without people trying to say it's against their human rights to stay in a cruise ship or to stay in a hotel. It's time that we stop working against ourselves. I just don't get it, why we're doing this, when the reality is we cannot afford it. And our own people in this country are suffering. Our armed forces, people on the streets who haven't got a decent accommodation, even if a lot of the council properties and so on and so forth, people are getting ill because of mould. We should be investing in this country. And for those who come here, then there should be a proper process. And I'd say nothing wrong with a load of cruise ships moored outside this country where we can assess whether these people are legitimate. If they're not, send them back.
Yeah, and as you say so rightly, Nana, and we have people, that poor little boy who died recently because of the awful conditions he was living in, and we have people this winter, as we know, who can't afford to put their heating on, and yet their taxes are going to pay for people currently in hotels getting 3 meals a day, being looked after, while they are suffering. I think this is the problem here, that, even sort of like, relatively, people who would consider themselves left-wing are going, I have an issue with this. How can this be right?
Well, I hear people saying things like, oh, but the migrants only get £30 a week or whatever it is. And I'm like, £30 a week once all your bills have been paid, once your food is already on the table. A lot of people are in minus money. The fact that you've actually got all of that, and any medical needs that you require will be looked after by our NHS. So you're actually in not a bad position in comparison to most people some people are in overdraft, they're taking loans to afford to live, they're trying to pay all their bills. You can't get anywhere there's waiting lists, everyone's going on strike. I mean, for goodness sake, we cannot afford this. So we have to do something. And Suella, I think, pull your finger out and go for those cruise ships. I think there's nothing wrong with it. As long as they're in good order, which most of them will be, then I just don't see what the objection could possibly be to that at all.
And it has been suggested before, hasn't it? There was a former boss of Border Force who suggested this idea a good few years ago now, and again that was poo-pooed. It wasn't, human rights, etc., etc. But now we, as that horrific incident the other week where we had people drowning in the Channel, all the time we keep saying human rights. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't solve that problem, and people are still dying. People are still crossing the Channel, and nobody, Nana, is coming up with an alternative answer.
Well, that's right. And incidentally, we're taking on more of the migrants than the other countries. So the migrants know that if they're being rejected to the others, they can come to us. And what we are drawing them in with these wonderful hotels, 5-star hotels, castles. I mean, is this a joke? No. You've come to somebody else's country. You try that in Africa. You turn up, rock up in, say, near Ghana, and see if anyone's going to say, oh, this poor person. You just be on the street. You'll have to make your own way. So...
Why do you think even other countries in Europe now to get away with? I mean, in Poland they build a great big fence, and no one says, "Oh, human rights, you can't do that." And yet, as soon as we even suggest putting up in a cruise ship, by the way, it's not torture chamber, in a cruise ship, it's like, "Oh my God, you're a racist country. It's against human rights. How dare you?" Why are we the ones taken to task all the time?
Well, you've got to ask yourself, who is actually fighting? We're fighting ourselves. It's our own human rights lawyers who are happily making a nice little... There's got to be a money trail here. There's an industry in allowing these people to stay. And what will these people do? They'll be completely discombobulated. All these human rights lawyers will have nothing left. And somewhere there is a paper trail of cash, and somebody somewhere is making quite a bit of money organising all of this. And I mean, I would even go as far as to say that a lot of the smugglers, those who are actually smuggling the people, are probably involved in a lot of this human rights activity as well. They're probably in hock with some of these people. I mean, I have no proof of this, but there's got to be some sort of cohesion somewhere, collusion, because frankly, we are fighting ourselves. And then, of course, we've got the European Courts of Human Rights, which seems to only want to work against us, but then other EU countries seem to be able to bypass it. So I don't really understand why we're making it so difficult for ourselves.
Nana, thank you so much for joining us. That was GB News star Nana Akua tonight, and thank you very much. More debate and top guests coming up right after this break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock. I'm Dawn Neeson in for Dan Wootton tonight. As ambulance workers announce yet more strikes for the new year, are union leaders clutching at straws for continuing their punishing walkouts. They even resorted to blaming the government for sexism. I'll debate that next with my superstar panel. Christine Hamilton, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. As the Scottish Parliament erupts after MSPs pass a seismic sex change law.
And the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed. The next...
Have the SNP inflamed the gender wars with their extremist reforms? And could Westminster step in to prevent Sturgeon erasing women? Former Olympian and activist Sharon Davis reacts at 10:20. As Daily Mail columnist Ross Clark contrasts the outrage over Jeremy Clarkson's Meghan column to Liberal attacks on Priti Patel and Nigel Farage, why is it OK to be offensive if you're left-wing? We'll debate that in the media buzz at 10:30. And after Brits are warned not to get drunk over Christmas due to NHS disarray, good luck with this one, and the Telegraph's Celia Warden complains of being made to feel dirty for enjoying a tipple, is boozing becoming demonised? Man of the People and former Corrie star Charlie Lawson joins me for a nightcap in Uncancelled at 10:45. Plus, of course, tomorrow's front pages and Greatest Britain and Union Jackass are on the way. But first, the news with Bethany Elsey.
Dawn, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Scottish Parliament has passed a bill allowing citizens to change their registered gender without medical supervision.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
The new law removes the need for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria and lowers the minimum age to transition from 18 to 16. It also shortens the time a person must live in their acquired identity to 3 months before it's officially recognised. It's 6 months if they are 16 or 17 years old. It's unclear when the new process will take effect. Thousands of ambulance workers will stage 2 further days of strike action next month over a pay dispute. Unison says it will affect services across 5 regions of England on the 11th and 23rd of January. Several union leaders say the action is a result of the government's refusal to discuss pay. But the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says they must respect the independent pay review body.
You cannot have an independent pay review process which takes the politics out of pay and then have politicians intervening in that process. Not only does it blow the process up and destroy the process, but it also means what happens in future years. You know, is this going to be politicians now doing that? It's really important. It's been done by governments of different colours. The independent pay review process has been used pretty successfully, and that's what we want to continue.
250,000 people set to travel by air tomorrow are being warned to expect delays as Border Force staff begin a week of strike action. It's as rail workers get ready for further industrial action, with RMT members in Scotland walking out on Christmas Eve until Tuesday morning. The government has announced rail fares in England will rise by 5.9% in March. The Transport Secretary says the cap is well below inflation and it'll help reduce the impact on passengers. A winter weather emergency is threatening more than 135 million Americans with sub-zero temperatures. Take a look at this dashcam video from Denver in Colorado. Those blizzard conditions with dangerously high winds are wreaking havoc during the holiday travel period. 45 states are under storm alerts, and President Joe Biden is warning Americans who want to leave to do so before it gets worse.
And I don't know whether your bosses will let you, but if you all have travel plans, leave now. Not a joke. I'm sending my staff, if they had plans to leave on tomorrow, late tonight or tomorrow, I'm telling them to leave now. They can talk to me on the phone. It's not life and death, but it will be if they don't get out.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Dan Wootton tonight with Dawn.
Now, tomorrow's news tonight, now in our media buzz. Right, let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages. Hot off the press, so hot, I actually preempted them there. Right, first off, we have got the Daily Mirror, which is a warning about the King's Xmas security fears. You know, he's been egged recently. Security warning that if he goes on another royal walkabout over Christmas, it might happen again. So that's on high alert. Also, we have the Independent. This is not good news for anyone planning to travel over Christmas. Travel disruption for Christmas. Millions face delays, cancellations, road, rails and flights. Don't bother, stay at home. And finally, the last one in at the moment is the Eye, which is, again, not good news. NHS mass strikes in January as medics dig in for battle with number 10. And a Happy New Year, everybody, on that one. Wow, right, OK, well, thankfully, some good news. My superstar panel are back with me. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and writer and broadcaster Amy Nicholl. All looking very festive here. Red and... Let them side down a little bit, Sean, here, come on. Right, OK, let's get straight into these stories, shall we? A break-in tonight, ambulance workers will stage 2 further strikes in January as the winter of discontent continues. The Unison Union said industrial action will take place on January 11th and 23rd, leaving millions of Brits suffering medical emergencies at the risk of not being treated. Meanwhile, earlier today, National Highways workers began striking in London and the South East as millions of motorists started their Christmas getaways. I'm going to be one of these people. It dreads me, oh dear. It comes as the Trades Union Congress General Secretary, Baroness O'Grady, sensationally claimed male government ministers were refusing to meet with public sector unions because many of them are led by women. I'm struggling with this one. She told The Telegraph's Christopher Hope there was a suspicion that a sexist bias among government ministers was stopping them from entering face-to-face talks. Now, Lady O'Grady, 69, says it's not a good look to say that you won't even speak to women leaders, although no one's actually said that, because it is primarily women leading unions representing predominantly women. So, I really am struggling with this one, I must admit. Of all the excuses I think someone could come up with, the fact that we're not negotiating is because you're women, I'm going to come to the only boy on the panel here. If I may identify you as a boy, Sean.
I identify as a boy.
So, I mean... What is going on here? I mean, are the government being sexist by not talking to the unions, or maybe other things are going on?
It goes deeper. What it firstly shows you is she's absolutely shameless and will say anything because she has had meetings. Steve Baker, the Health Secretary, has met the unions and spoken it through. The second thing is she would need to demonstrate that a different offer has been made to male union leaders, which simply isn't true. And thirdly, nobody said the words other than her. Nobody said anything like those words. What she is doing, she's trying to rile people up and give them something to hold on to that isn't true. And what it really signifies, the real thing here is these strikes are political. They're based on getting rid of the government and they're asking for unrealistic pay demands. They're making sure that people don't speak to them so that they then could blame it on the government. I do think they'll get to the point where it isn't the unions versus the government, it's the unions versus the public.
However, I don't think the claims are totally unfounded. Because,
really?
Well, sexist bias within the Tory party is not a new idea.
But they are the party that have had 3 female prime ministers?
They are, but they're also
and counting.
riddled with sexual harassment claims.
As is the Labour Party.
Allegations.
I'm just saying, I'm just trying to rationalise where she might have come to this conclusion from. But, I mean, this is the party that had to suspend an MP for watching pornography in the House of Commons this year.
He was looking at tractors.
It was a tractor. Yeah, come on, who hasn't Googled tractor?
It was a very interesting tractor. But, yeah, there's an atmosphere in Parliament which has been quoted by a former Tory MP, Anne Milton.
But come on, sexism.
Smelling of
all the reasons that the government...
But it's not completely unfounded, that's all I'm saying. It's not come out of nowhere.
It is unfounded because she's produced no evidence whatsoever. She says, first of all, it was a suspicion that there's a sexist bias amongst government ministers. She's produced absolutely no evidence. And then she also says, quote, it's not a good look to say that you won't even speak to women leaders. Who has said that they won't speak to women leaders? Nobody. She is putting all this in. She says, you know, why leave that suspicion in people's minds? She has put the suspicion in with no evidence whatsoever.
It's all generated. It's a personality. It's an assassination of the government's personality. That's what she's trying to put in. If you're already angry, if you believed this, you would see no sense after that. And that's her deliberate stance here. And what people should do, actually, she's taking you for a fool. To put this out there and suggest that somebody else did it is taking people for a fool, and I hope there's a backlash.
Amy, Mick Lynch is also saying they're not willing to talk to him. He's definitely not a girl.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, they haven't sat around the table and negotiated enough, and I think that's more the problem here. But the allegations of sexism, I don't think are completely wild, as you maybe initially
Sexism exists all over the place, Amy, doesn't it? It's not just confined to the Conservative...
But that doesn't make it right.
It's all over Parliament, it's all over industry, it's actually in the media, it's everywhere.
Why you bring that point up?
There you go, you've just answered it.
Why you bring that point up? I want to move on to the second story today on the topic of gender equality. Cambridge University philosopher John Marabon has raised eyebrows by claiming the reputation of female academics is tainted by positive discrimination. He's actually said that women at universities cannot be sure they've got there on merit because many institutions shoehorn female candidates in to shortlist just to fill quotas. So, I mean, it's the old positive discrimination again. But, you know, I edited a national newspaper. I really hate to think that I got that job because I got a pair of boobs, OK? Not even impressive boobs. But I really want to think that I got there on merit of being a good journalism.
Well, you did, because in those days, I think... Sorry, not implying it was that long ago, but in those days...
Back in 1872, when we had quill pens...
In those days, you would have got the job on merit, not just because the move to push women regardless wasn't there.
But do you think he's got a point then saying this, that women in universities really might have got there because we're ticking boxes and filling quotas?
Quite a lot of members of Parliament, female members of Parliament, got there because of ticking boxes. I mean, who are the MPs who are on all-female shortlists? I mean, step forward Angela Rayner for one. I mean, Angela Rayner, Stella Creasy, Jess Phillips, they were all on all-women shortlists. I'm not saying that they're not brilliant, etc., etc., but you have to wonder if they would have got there if there'd been men up against them.
What's incredible about that, many of those MPs can't tell you what a woman is. So
well, there you are.
That comes on a woman's only shortlist. Look, there's a pressure here because black people have suffered from years. The idea that you're here because you're black, you're just part of the furniture, will overlook you.
Do you still think this applies? I mean, you know, you are obviously black. I mean, do you still worry that maybe sometimes you get jobs, you get hired for comment shows like this because of the colour of your skin rather than the debate you can bring to it?
Listen, it's always in the background because people say it to you. Yeah. I remember winning a selection and someone said to me, well, you only got this far because you're black. And my grandmother, any black person watching this programme now will have heard these words, you have to work twice as hard. And this whole idea of positive discrimination, and I think those words need to be looked at, it plays into that. And it's a real shame because it means that you're constantly trying to prove your worth.
But the thing is, with this particular story about this women in academia, this isn't really the case here because in academia, women are wildly underrepresented and there just aren't the numbers that there are of male academics. And positive discrimination since 2010 has been illegal. And actually, it's talking about positive action. So that's attracting certain types of people, characteristics that aren't necessarily making up that industry workforce group, and trying to attract them into the profession. But so
what you're
that's
saying,
not a bad thing.
No, what you're saying, positive action is great news. I've always said to people,
well, that's
if you want to get black people or women to think, go and find those people. I believe the talent is there. This professor was talking about a very scary, pervasive atmosphere.
Yeah. He was talking about
he
was talking about something imaginary, basically,
well,
because that isn't
there's a lot of that going on at the moment.
That isn't the situation in academia.
While we're talking about imaginary things, should we talk about Meghan? Coming up, as Meghan backers who shrugged off attacks on Priti Patel and Nigel Farage are called out on their hypocrisy, is it OK to be offensive if you are left-wing? My superstar panel tackle that question in Media Buzz Part 2, coming up at 10:30. But first, as the SNP vote to allow children as young as 15 to begin the process of legally changing their sex, is Sturgeon about to go to war with Westminster over gender? Activist Sharon Davis breaks down this seismic move and what it means for the women of Scotland, coming up next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi, welcome back. A time now for decorated Olympian and women's rights advocate Sharon Davies. Earlier today, the SNP's hugely controversial gender recognition bill was finally voted through the Scottish Parliament, giving the green light for 15-year-olds in Scotland to start the process of changing sex when they are just 16 years old. Holyrood erupted with cries of shame on you as Nicola Sturgeon's party was accused of putting women and vulnerable children in danger.
Thank you all. We will continue with business. Thank you. The next, we will suspend business.
One particular part of the bill that allows rapists and child abusers to change gender caused huge upset. But in a bid to block it, it was dramatically slapped down by just one vote, with First Minister Nicola Sturgeon voting to allow sex offenders to transition under the bill. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross confronted Sturgeon in the chamber.
The First Minister's own vote means that a man standing trial for rape can claim they're a woman and force a victim to call them she. Why did the First Minister vote for this?
In a potential huge twist tonight, the Secretary of State for Scotland, Alistair Jack, said he was willing to consider blocking the bill over huge concerns about women's safety. I'm absolutely thrilled now to welcome Sharon Davies, a proper heroine of mine. Sharon, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a real passion of yours. You are very vocal and very brave talking about the rights of women when that seems to be almost a crime these days. Sharon, is this a dark new development in the battle for women's rights? I mean, you must be as horrified as most women are hearing what's going on in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. And evening to you. It's lovely to be here as well, speaking to you tonight. Look, I've got all sparkled up because we're near Christmas. Yes, I mean, it's a really, really dark day. It's a dark day for women and children in Scotland. You know, this isn't about gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria, which was, you know, will receive a medical diagnosis. This is about self-identification. So potential sex offenders, which we know exist, and we know that they will use any loopholes they possibly can, because history shows us that, are now able to identify as females and to go into female spaces, whether that's women's changing rooms, whether that's the local swimming pool where they can change next to young girls, you know, whether that's women's toilets. So this isn't about, you know, having an issue with anyone that has genuine gender dysphoria. You know, this is something which is really distressing, and we need to support people that are transgender. However, this is about self-ID and a loophole which will be used by predators.
I mean, because basically what this means is that living in Scotland now under the new rules, if you're above the age of 18, living as a chosen gender for 3 months without any medical diagnosis.
Any medical diagnosis or any medication. You know, people have the misconception, and obviously my area of expertise is sport, and it's usually sport that I'm talking about, but obviously today it's this particular bill. But in sport, you know, people have the misconception that if someone decides to change gender, you know, decide that they want to be a trans woman when they're biologically male, that they must have some form of surgery. That is not the case. You know, the vast majority, over 95%, do not have any form of surgery whatsoever. Some suppress their testosterone if they want to meet certain guidelines in sport, but many don't even do that. So, you know, biologically, they are 100% male. And sex is binary. You know, there's two gametes, a small one and a large one. We need one of each to reproduce, and whichever sex you are, male or female, including anyone that's DSD, differences of sexual development, you cannot change that biological sex. It will be in every single gene in your body, in your chromosome in your body. And, you know, it has things like bone structure is very different. Like the size of our hips is different because women give birth. So, you know, there's lots of things that affect sport and performance in particular. And these aren't changed just because someone decides to recognise themselves as the opposite sex.
Without absolutely any medical diagnosis whatsoever, 3 months, you know, so you can travel to Scotland, live for 3 months, and suddenly come back, and, you know, if you're a man, you are a woman, and even though you look like a man, you're physically still a man, you can say legally you are a woman. But this isn't just about women's rights, it's about children's rights as well, isn't it, Sharon? Because, I mean, we are now saying that 15-year-olds...
Yeah, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds are not allowed to drink. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to drive a car until they're 17. They're not allowed to go and get a tattoo. You know, it seems strange that they're able to make such a very, very important decision. And puberty is a horrible phase. I mean, I don't know about your puberty, but my puberty was awful. You know, I was trying to train 5-6 hours a day, and it was an emotional roller coaster. And it's such a difficult time for young people, and there's no doubt about it that the trans debate is a very contagious one. I mean, we've got schools down here. There's a school in Swindon where they have twice the national average. Well, that's not because there's twice as many people in that particular school in Swindon that are transgender. It's a contagious situation as well amongst young people. And they do, you know, a lot of the autistic figures, again, are very, very high. So kids that don't feel that they fit in are sort of finding their way into this group. And then sometimes they're making very big decisions which will affect them for the rest of their life. And if we give young girls testosterone, it changes their voice, it changes their chin, it develops hair on their face and on their bodies, which, if they come off the testosterone, will not stop. You know, once they're given these drugs, it's for guys, it's slightly different. If they come off the estrogen, testosterone is a much stronger chemical and it tends to take over again. But with girls, if we make the changes to young girls, and if they go and have double mastectomies, they're putting themselves down a medicalized route probably for the rest of their lives. And that is a massive decision to make at 16 years old.
Massive. I mean, yeah, as you say, we can't, you know, kids, you're going through all this hormone uplift. And Sharon, you have been very, very vocal on this subject, talking about the rights of women, and that's all you're doing. And talking about the rights of women, let's be clear, doesn't make you transphobic, OK? It just makes you talking about the rights of women. Sharon, some of the Scottish MPs and women campaigns in Scotland have been threatened with rape and death threats. What sort of response do you get from people when you do talk out? Do you get this sort of reaction as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I think Twitter is a little bit of a cesspit, isn't it? But it is a place where people are paying attention and listening, and you can get opinions out there, you can get information out there. My stance with sport has always been that it should be about the science, the proved science. And we've got 16 peer-reviewed studies. All of the peer-reviewed studies that's ever been done, not a single one of them proves that you can mitigate against male puberty. So 16 peer-reviewed studies, of which the last one was only a few months ago, coming out of Brazil, the biggest study ever, and that showed that even after 16 years of suppressing testosterone, you couldn't remove all of the male physical benefits that puberty gives somebody. So you're asking female athletes to compete with a disadvantage. And we're not asking male athletes to do that. We're only asking female athletes to do that. So we just need to be able to discuss this and come up with better ways. You know, I believe that everyone should be able to do sport, including anyone that's transgender. However, I do believe that females deserve fair sport too. And I will fight for that right. You know, I went through the East German era, and that affected 2 generations of young girls that lost their positions, their medals, their opportunities, and I just don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, and it is always the women that tend to be suffering in these situations, isn't it? I think our rights are being turned back.
Women that suffer, you know, it's ridiculous. At the moment, you know, half of the offenders that are in Scottish prisons have changed their gender after they have been put behind bars.
Yeah,
you know, and you ask yourself, why is this? Why is this all of a sudden when they're going to be put into prison that they've decided that they're transgender? You know, this is a massive loophole which should not be allowed to be taken advantage of. And I think that the bill was rushed through. I went up to Holyrood with friends of mine that were international sports women, and we were not allowed to talk to Holyrood. And yet they listened to 2 LGBT advocates, and only 2 LGBT advocates, and they were men. On the rights of women's sport. And they were the only people that Holyrood listened to.
It isn't, well, and Nicola Sturgeon is a woman. A women's rights campaigner and British Olympian Sharon Davies, thank you so much for that, and keep fighting the good fight. Coming up, after the nanny state warns Brits not to get drunk over Christmas, good luck, former Corrie star Charlie Lawson debates whether boozing is becoming demonised in and cancelled at 10:45. But first, come after Meghan like Jeremy Clarkson and you'll be cancelled, but Priti Patel and Nigel Farage are fair game. So why is it OK to be offensive if you're left-wing? My superstar panel attempt to get to the bottom of this one, and there's more newspaper front pages on the way in the media buzz after this short break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. More front pages have just been delivered. Right, more front pages right in front of us. The Guardian leads with the developing story just discussed on number 10, threatening to block the new Scottish law allowing 16-year-olds to legally change gender. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail also leads with the Scottish gender vote. One particular controversial clause allows sex offenders and paedophiles to transition, meaning their victims could be forced to address them in court under their new pronouns. Oh, don't. Meanwhile, the Telegraph reports that Kilmarsh murderer Damien Bendel yesterday given a whole life sentence for fatally attacking his pregnant partner, her 2 children and another 11-year-old girl, was free to kill after probation blunders. How many times do you hear this? Mistakenly assessed him as just medium risk. Horrific story. But we will have a Merry Christmas, is the Express's defiant headline. That's the Times, though, isn't it? I can spot the difference. Any case, the Express are all... Where are they? Yeah, we will have a Merry Christmas. There you go. What we're doing, we can't... We're going on a spending spree, evidently. Well, good luck with that one, yes. We're going to £2.6 billion into the economy. She says, looking nervously at her panel, because I can't afford to do that, ahead of Christmas. And nearly 28 million shoppers hitting the high street today and tomorrow. Oh, God. Meanwhile, The Sun leads with a showbiz exclusive that winning Strictly Pro Juwita Pristel is secretly dating co-star Giovanni Pernice. I don't even know who those people are. I'm terrible. Sorry.
Nor do I.
Giovanni.
Don't worry, I don't either.
No,
he's the best one.
More on the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Author and commentator Christine Hamilton, former Tory mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and writer and broadcaster Amy Nichol. And here we are looking all very festive again. Now we have to go to Jeremy Clarkson because why wouldn't we? His controversial column at the weekend where he said he dreamed of people throwing excrement at a naked Meghan Markle. This is a really weird fantasy. His TV career may be on the line. When asked about the Sun column earlier this week, managing director of ITV Studios, Kevin Ligo, called it awful and said his hosting role on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was only safe at the moment. But don't think this Clarkson controversy has exposed the rank hypocrisy of the left? Daily Mail columnist Ross Clark thinks so, writing, while its commentators, politicians, Twitter warriors erupt into outrage at a columnist in a Conservative newspaper, the truth is that the left has its own despicable record of making horrible remarks, some of which might be said to verge on incitement to violence. Now, remember Joe Brand's vile comments about Nigel Farage after he had a milkshake thrown over him in 2019, which forced the BBC to apologise?
I'm kind of thinking, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid?
Right, OK. Then in 2020, we saw this cruel cartoon of Priti Patel in The Guardian. Yuck. As a Hindu, the image of the former Home Secretary is wildly inappropriate, yet the paper declined to remove it or say sorry. Right, OK. Well, I'm going to start with you, Amy, on this one, because you are our resident gorgeous left-wing person sitting on the sofa tonight. I mean, it does seem a bit unfair that Clarkson, as vile as his comments were, I agree, is taken to task, get him sacked, removed from TV, whereas Joe Brand literally said it's OK to throw acid in someone's face and no one really said anything.
Well, I'm not sure that no one really said anything, though, because I think what Joe Brand said was awful, and I would never condone that. But crucially, the BBC apologised, and I think we're still waiting for Clarkson to issue a proper apology, because he hasn't yet. And I think all the instances that Ross Clark has noted, I don't think there wasn't any fuss. I think there was fuss about all of those.
Well, Miriam Margolyes, who I actually like, I think she's very funny, by the way, she said she wanted Boris Johnson to die when he had COVID and Ofcom complaints, etc. But she's presenting Victorian Christmas on TV this week. So there does seem to be a double standard here,
I think, but equally, there is a difference between comedy and a comedy routine and an opinion piece.
No, there isn't. There's absolutely no difference at all. Jeremy Clarkson...
Well, yeah, there is.
No, there isn't. If that's your defence, then Jeremy Clarkson could say I was joking.
But it's an opinion piece.
Yeah, and people told jokes regularly.
So there's no,
you're missing the point, Sean.
No, I really am, please.
Yeah. Joe Brand and Miriam Margolyes and other people have made jokes, similar horrible jokes, which I totally reject, on comedy shows, whereas Jeremy Clarkson's piece was in a national newspaper, albeit just the Sun, a tabloid, but it was in a national newspaper in a OK, a Jeremy Clarkson column, so can that ever be called serious? But it wasn't part of a comedy routine. Well, the others were there to be funny. That's why they were... It's like headliners on GB News. They take the mick out of things.
I don't accept that. What Jeremy Clarkson said was well beyond the pale.
Of course it was.
We all know that. Right? But the fact that somebody can say something even more devastating and it's OK... because
No, it was never OK. They were equally held to account.
No, they weren't. Nobody said to Joe Brand or the other woman they should lose their job.
Well, they did. They continued to.
There was a public outrage.
Unless everybody gets treated the same, then there's a bias. And it does look like... Right, it does look like people are going to pursue Jeremy out of his job. Let's see what happens. ITV have form on that. But you can't treat Jeremy any different than you treat the other ones. But I don't accept this thing.
And the argument, I agree with you, Sean, because the argument doesn't stand up, because Miriam Margolyes, when she made that comment about Boris Johnson, that wasn't part of a comedy routine. That was her opinion. She was being interviewed. So that wasn't a comedy routine. That was like an opinion column.
My opinion, my view is that Jeremy Clarkson is as entitled to say what I said, but what he said I thought was deeply horrendous. He probably assumes that everybody watches Game of Thrones. I had no idea this was I didn't know what he was talking about. The only thing I could think of was Lady Godiva, and I thought it was a revolting comment. And as Amy has said, his apology was not a proper apology. It had a mocking tone about it. Oh dear, I've been caught out. Yeah. So he hasn't properly apologised. And I think, but I will, it's the old thing, I will defend to my death his right to say it. He had the right to say it. And they all do. I mean, George Galloway, when Margaret Thatcher died, said, may she burn in hellfire. Well, that's pretty offensive to our greatest Prime Minister, on a par with Winston Churchill. So I think they all have a right to say it, but I do think the context matters.
You can say whatever you want, but don't be surprised when you are taken to when you're taken into account.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. And I think
he won't lose his job.
But with Jeremy Clarkson, it was so shocking because it was he listed 3 women. So it was clearly about their femininity. It was clearly...
It was misogynist, definitely.
You saw it as misogynist?
Yes, very much so.
It couldn't even be mistaken any other way because there were 3 women listed, not 3 people he dislikes,
the point
3 things he disliked.
Nobody's saying what he said was correct. We all agree it's a horrible thing to say. Unnecessary. I did watch Game of Thrones and actually...
And you understood it then,
yeah. It was a comment for me, actually.
Yeah.
But the point is here, if Jeremy's going to lose his job because of it,
he's
fine.
Not. He's not.
Hold on. The point
he's
I'm trying
not.
to make, if Jeremy loses his job, then everybody else should lose their job when they do similar things. You've got to treat people the same.
So, Amy, you said, unfortunately, he's not. So you think he should lose his job? He shouldn't be on TV anymore?
I think when you consider ITV as a platform, do they want to be associated with platforming a misogynist? And this isn't like Jeremy Clarkson's first offence, is it? And I think maybe this is just perfect timing
but the same
for someone else to fill the role. Why not have a breath of fresh air? Somebody that could inspire rather than cause incitement.
The same could be said about BBC with Mary Margolis. She should jog on. The BBC is our national broadcaster.
And she was presenting this week.
Yeah, the only point to be made when you start cancelling people, cancel everybody or nobody.
I think
you can't get picky.
If Jeremy Clarkson...
Intermittent outrage is not outrage, it's political activism.
Any case, nobody's cancelled here. This is GB News.
There's a very small line between what is morally reprehensible, which I think all the examples we've given are morally reprehensible, and what is criminal. And if it's not criminal, you can't prosecute.
Wasn't criminal.
And there was an uprising when she's Margolyes, by the way. I hate to be pedantic, but that is how she pronounces her name. When Miriam Margolyes and Joe Brown, there was an outcry. Amy's right, there was an outcry.
Did anybody try to get their job? This is the thing that interests me.
No one asked for them to be sacked, as Amy has just requested. I'm talking
about equal outcomes.
Any case, I'm cancelling a lot of you for now because we have to move on.
Well done.
Right, coming up, the power is in my hands as I get to name tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jack. Dan who? Any case, we'll discover which Hollywood heartthrob wants to erase gendered awards categories when my panel give their nominations at 10:50. But first, after Brits are warned not to get drunk over Christmas, due to NHS disarray and the Telegraph, Celia Warden says she's been victimised for liking a tipple. Is drinking now becoming demonised? I'll say cheers to former Corrie star Charlie Lawson after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And tonight, I'm joined by a man of the people and former Corrie actor, Charlie Lawson. Now, a religious row has broken out after a cardinal hit back at the senseless censorship of our traditional British carols. Parishioners even, teeth back in dawn, at the Mayor's community carol service in Loughborough were left baffled after noticing the lyrics of 17th century hymn God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen had been shaken up with references to the queer and questioning, as well as women who by men had been erased. Cardinal Vincent Nicholas, Archbishop of Westminster, has sensationally hit back at the woke agenda creeping into churches, insisting that preserving traditional carols is more important than particular sensitivities to archaic lyrics. Right, OK. Well, I mean, oh, God, is there nothing we're not rewriting now? Charlie, welcome to the show, my love.
Oh,
Good to have you
Jesus.
on. Right.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Donny, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, and it's great to have you on the show.
It's very seldom you will find me agreeing with a cardinal, but I have to say he gets my vote. I mean, in the name of Jesus, this does actually piss everybody off, because what a good King Wenceslas last looked out on the feast of Judith. I mean, you know, what is this all about, for God's sake?
Well, I mean, for God's sake, quiet. Well, and where do we stop with this? I mean, what else are we going to start rewriting? I mean, We Three Kings becomes We Three Queens. I mean,
exactly. I mean, it's just as I've always said, Dawn. It's somebody wakes up in the morning, climbs out of bed, and says, "Right, how can I be completely buck stupid today? How can I come up with something that's really going to piss everybody off?" And this is right up there with the top three. You know what I mean? But it will continue.
And who's
as long as we're in this sort of, as long as we're, as I've said to Dan, as long as we're still in this sort of weird woke world, then this kind of stuff will continue. And the best thing we can do is totally ignore it. Go to church, sing your lungs out, and then go to the pub and have a decent bottle of wine or 5-6 pints or whatever.
Right, OK, which brings us very neatly on to our other subject tonight, doesn't it? Which is ongoing healthcare strikes have led to beleaguered Brits being warned not to get merry over Christmas. Don't go drinking, Charlie, it's lethal. The NHS fearing they will struggle to treat you if you go out and indulge in a bit of festive spirit.
Well, nobody wants anybody to fall over and hurt themselves or what have you, but... this all comes back to 2 years ago, at 5 o'clock every night, listening to Witty, Valance, Van Tam and Handjob or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's all this bloody crap, and we gradually allow ourselves to be lectured, and we're quite comfortable with people telling us what to do. And if we keep going on like this, this will continue. I mean, we all know the ins and outs and the pros and cons of the NHS. We don't need to debate that anymore. I think that's blatantly obvious to anyone. And if you want to try and cover your arse by saying don't fall over because we won't be able to help you, that's a pretty pathetic excuse in my book. I don't want anyone to fall over. And, you know, I've been around many, many blocks, and I know what too much alcohol and too much anything else can do for you. We don't want that at all. But don't be lecturing us what we're going to do on Christmas Day.
Don't you think we're taking personal responsibility away from people here, Charlie? I mean, you know, it's like, you know, we're not stupid, we're not little kids. We know what's right and what's wrong. And it's like, as you said, back in the pandemic where they were literally telling us how to walk down the street. Remember that? Painting little footsteps on there. And now, as Celia Walden wrote in her column, it's like we're being demonised for anything that's even a little bit fun, like having a drink, going out partying with your mates. And, you know, don't do that, you put the NHS under pressure. I mean, when is this going to stop? It's madness.
Well, it'll stop as soon as we just start to ignore it. It's as simple as that. And I'm afraid to say that human beings, or should I say male and female human beings, I'm quite totally bloody confused what I'm allowed to friggin' say, you know what I mean? But mankind, womankind, and any other kind of kind has been enjoying alcohol or any other stimulant since Adam and Eve, or Adam and Julia, or Jim and Jim, or Frida and, you know what I mean? Have been enjoying this the effects of various narcotics, alcohol, or anything else since the dawn of time, and this will continue. And whether you like it or whether you don't, it's as simple as that. But it's just immensely silly when someone is wagging their finger at you and saying, like, just you take it easy now, just be sensible. Sorry.
So I take it you will be going out and enjoying a drink or 10 this Christmas then, Charlie?
Well, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but my partner Debbie runs a women's refuge in Manchester, so we have some of the girls over, and we cook for them on Christmas Day in the village club, and that's what we'll be doing. But once the dishes are away and the food is bagged up and put in the fridge, I shall be at the bar, as I was last year, with the girls and what have you, and we'll have a good old chinwag and a few pints, a few glasses of wine. You're damn right I will.
Brilliant, good for you. And you'll be singing a few carols, no doubt, as well.
Yes, if you can call them carols, I'll be singing them.
Well, maybe we should call them a non-binary name now. What could we... I mean, carol's very much associated with females, isn't it? I mean...
I know, but listen, Dawn, I swear to God, I'm reasonably intelligent, but every day I'm getting more and more confused. I really am. And it's, thank the Lord, I laugh at it, because otherwise you'd go completely nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is after they tried to rewrite pantomimes and said pantomimes weren't politically acceptable these days because they weren't ticking all the boxes that they needed to tick. I mean...
But it's like we were saying before, and your Kane, your lovely researcher, called me today. You know, are we really saying that you can't play a part unless you are it, so to speak? I mean, my example was Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the greatest actors ever to grace the stage, TV or film screens, wasn't to play Christie in My Left Foot, and I think win Oscar for Best Actor because he didn't have cerebral palsy. I mean, am I not allowed to play Michael Collins, one of the founders of the Provisional IRA, because I'm a loyalist stroke unionist? I mean, if this was the case, we wouldn't have had Francis Tumblety playing Hamlet, you know, who's clearly a chap. And we wouldn't have, black actors playing Hamlet or anything. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. So where do we start and where do we end?
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and just wish you all a very Merry Christmas and good luck with the refuge. An amazing job you're doing there. Well, that was TV legend and man of the people, Charlie Lawson. Right, OK, thank you very much there. Now, it's time for the Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Right, with me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel, author and commentator Christine Hamilton, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and writer and broadcaster Amy Nicol. This is the highlight of the show, isn't it? We love this bit. Right, OK, who are we going to go for first? Let's Christine. OK, who is your GB tonight?
My greatest Britons are plural. They are the wonderful members of our armed forces who are uncomplainingly going to go and tackle all the jobs which the strikers won't do over Christmas. They can't strike, and they're just going to come in and fill the gaps, as they always do. So they are greatest Britons.
Very, very worthy indeed. Sean, how about yours?
I can do one better. My greatest Britain nominee is Jesus Christ and Christmas. Okay. You know, Christmas is the best time of year. The family, the food, the presents, the celebration. Focus on Jesus and forget about the strikes, is what I say.
Wow, go on, trump that one, Amy. Who's your GB?
Well, I think I can. It is the generous Baroness Michelle Mone, who is charging us, the taxpayer, just £61,000 a week to store all that unusable PPE that she so kindly hooked us up with, while she holidays in the French Alps for £6,000 a night.
Yeah, it was a cheap holiday, wasn't it? Right, well, I think... I mean, there's a lot of competition. I mean, we're including Jesus in this one. But I am going to go for Christine, and that's the armed forces. I mean, you know, they do an amazing job. They are covering every area during the strikes, and often on less pay than the people they're covering for. And their Christmases have been cancelled as well, haven't they? So, right, OK, let's move on to Union Jackass, boo hiss. Christine, who are you going to go for?
Well, my Union Jackass is Jeremy Clarkson. Need I say more? We've discussed him.
We've already been there, haven't we? Yes, indeed. Yeah, but we are talking about his column rather a lot.
Oh, please don't.
I know. But other people do columns that are very good, just saying. Sean, who's your nomination?
My honorary Union Jackass is Hugh Jackman for insisting that we remove male and female categories from award ceremonies. I spoke to two of my friends who are young female struggling actors, and they said trust a man at the top of the industry to try to erase women in the industry. It's a silly thing to do. Women have a very different role, a very different route into the industry, and erasing them in this way is just bad news.
Why do actors feel like we have to have the benefit of their comments on literally everything? Just go and act. Just be an actor. In any case, Amy, who would you like to nominate?
It's our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, for his absolutely bizarre vision of the future, which included his absolute undying praise for the NHS workers that he has routinely ignored, underpaid and now pushed into striking.
He's actually gone missing a bit at the moment as well, Rishi Sunak. I mean, I don't remember the last time I saw or heard anything from him. I think one of the papers today is trying to find Rishi. Where is Rishi? Anyone seen him?
He wrote a column in a paper the other day. I can't remember which, but he did.
Was it about Meghan Markle by any chance?
No, I don't think so, no.
We've had enough columns on Meghan Markle.
I'm aware he did write something in a paper that sometime this week.
This is where he did set out his vision for the future. He did.
Right, OK, well, there's some tough choices here. But I think I'm going to probably go for Hugh Jackman, shall we?
I mean, you had to.
I don't know. I don't know if he's had a female relative, an elderly female relative in a hospital ward. I mean, you know, with men, it's incredibly uncomfortable. He's just talking out of his backside, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
As is very common these days.
Yet again, women are being made to feel invisible. Yet again.
Exactly. As Sharon.
And I'm fed up with it.
But we don't have the categories in cinematography, directing. Why should acting be different?
Because women and men do very different things in those roles, and it's a point of making sure that women get to lead.
Well,
this idea that you could just get actors is
We
not
have
good.
to go now. Thank you so much from all us here, Dan Wootton tonight, for your watching and for your support throughout 22. Stay tuned to GB News across the festive period. Next up, it's Headliners. Good night and thank you for watching.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest